Needs to be fixed.
Yes, young Americans general.
Which one?
Do you want to do it or
No, go ahead. You do it.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to piggyback off of him. It's a public education system, and very much property taxes and how like funding of schools is like I guess worked out. I believe that there should be school choice, and in order, okay, well, along with school choice, there should also be education of like the. Hold on, I had this in my head. I promise. Okay, I'll start with this. I believe that people can be enslaved by their environment. People don't get to choose whether or not, like, they grow up in a nice family or a, you know, I guess, yeah, just a nice family, nice town. They don't get to decide that. So they're kind of enslaved by their environment. It can be Plato's cave. Like, you would never know that, like, these options are out there for you if that's all you see. That's all you've, like, lived in. So I believe that school choice and education really should take part in like the change and being like getting people to be more educated and more aware of their choices and I guess it's like property taxes.
Expand on school choice. I think some people are confused.
Hold on, let's let social students.
Yeah, the problems in our public education system have everything to do with the drastic cutting of funding for public education over the last 30 years. Right along with that is the giant increase in class sizes. And one of the big debates going on right now, I'm surprised I didn't touch on it, is about teacher accountability and whether it's teachers are the problem. And absolutely not teachers are the problem. We're looking at a situation where teachers are having to teach classes of 25, 30 kids, and this is mostly happening in lower income areas in school districts that don't have the funding. And what the outcome that this makes is that people from those areas, many of whom are people of color, do not have the ability to be able to compete in a university setting. But it goes well beyond that. It goes whether their parents have jobs. It goes whether they can find opportunities outside of school, whether they have after-school programs, whether they have art and music education classes. I mean, these are things that in higher income areas people take for granted and talk about Plato's cave, not understanding that it can be extremely different from other people.
Okay, so on the topic of education, no, I'm not saying that I know from the hood, but I'm from a pretty impoverished area in South Texas, so I know how the struggles that can come about, and I've seen that in my place too, high pregnancy rates among teenagers down there, so I understand where that's coming from. And it happens to do a lot with school choice. If a school's failing it, a mother or a father or a family should have the right to pull their child from there and put them into a school that's actually thriving. You have to fix the public education system. You fix that from there, then that's where it starts. That's where you're getting educated. You need better teachers down there as well. You can't keep on incentivizing these poor teachers that aren't doing the right job. You need to incentivize good teachers, and if there's bad teachers, you need to take them out of the system.
Let me first start off by stating that my high school, out of all the people that graduated, only 4 of us went to college. And so I'm not from necessarily, I am from a slightly wealthy background, but my school wasn't that great. Yeah. So let me first say that the school system, although is very much to blame, is not the only thing holding people down. It is their environment to a certain extent. And let me also say that both my stepmom and my dad, who used to be a lawyer, is now a teacher. And the standardized test has destroyed teaching and education in this country to such a point that you have teachers to test. And that's all I have to say on that subject.
Excellent.
This question goes out to all of y'all. What is your current position on the foreign wars that we're fighting? How do you see America with regard to our foreign policy and how we deal with other nations?
Can I add just one second part? Is blowback involved in this at all? And can y'all define blowback if the audience doesn't know what it is?
Socialist.
Did I start with
I think Republicans do.
well, absolutely, we oppose all wars that the United States is involved in. And we don't think the United States has any role in policing the world or telling other countries what to do. But at the same time, that we're also not isolationists. And we think that the United States has caused irreparable harm to many other countries of the world, most notably right now Iraq and Afghanistan. And that we absolutely owe those countries reparations and rebuilding for what we have done to those countries. But it goes well beyond Iraq and Afghanistan. And it's the whole logic of regime change and the whole logic that we can tell other countries what to do is very much at the root of this. But it gets to something that I mentioned before. It's about making the world safe for American business. And as long as capitalism exists and as long as U.S. companies want to do business in other countries, it means that the military will be right there to tell those countries that U.S. businesses can do business there, whether they like it or not.
Okay, Americans. I'm going to go with one of you.
You got it? Oh, okay. Well, I'm a veteran of the Navy. Yeah! I'm 100% opposed to the wars. We have absolutely no business telling other nations what they should and shouldn't do. When you say capitalism is to blame, well, again, it's not capitalism because it's government merging with the market, right? That's corporatism. We're just
the state and capital have always been.
Yeah, we're arguing the same thing but different terms on that end, I imagine. But yeah, so
That's a much.
yeah, but yeah, no blowback. You asked blowback. I'll give you an example of blowback. Iran was a democratic nation, and then we went in with the CIA, and then we bombed churches, mosques, restaurants, and we helped throw out Mossadegh. And we wonder, and then we installed the Shah, who was oppressive, and we wonder now why Iran does not like America. The regime in Iran. Oh.
Do you have a rebuttal?
I don't have one.
Could you say your
stance
on it?
Rebuttal?
Do you have a rebuttal?
Yeah, well, I just want to point out, I mean, I actually agree with most everything my colleague up here said, but I want to point out that the reason that the United States overthrew Mossadegh is because Mossadegh wanted to nationalize the Anglo-Iranian oil company. And this is the reason why we engage in foreign interventions quite a bit. Arbenz in Guatemala was overthrown because he didn't even, he wanted to take land that the United Fruit Company wasn't even using to redistribute it to peasants. And so Eisenhower sent the CIA in there to get rid of Arbenz. And you can make a list. In fact, Leon Blum has a book called Rogue State, where it's basically just a list of all of the foreign U.S. interventions. You'll see that a company wanted to do business there, people didn't like it, and so go get rid of the government there and make the place safe for business. And it's like what I said before, Smedley Butler, former commandant of the Marines, described his career in the Marines as making Latin America, he was in Latin America up until the 1920s, making Latin America safe for U.S. banks and businesses.
I know this is kind of the second rebuttal I wanted for the Social Security thing. So the problem with, but I'm going to back off on the war too. The problem with money going towards government programs is you don't get to decide what government program that goes to, and that includes the wars. And so, like, it's going to fund, like, you, as government, will do what it wants because it has the power. Do the individuals have the power? No. And the ruling class, which are the rich people, are government. So I just want to point that out there. Anyway, so yeah, your money goes to things that you disagree with, and that shouldn't be allowed.
We've gone 25 minutes over. I'm going to take one more question and then.
No, jump.
He's been crazy. I'm sorry. Couldn't see you. You can go.
Hi, so I just wanted to do a tiny bit of fact checking and then ask a question. So, just going back to one of the social issues, the federal government has never funded abortion. There's this thing called the Hyde Amendment, and it was passed right after Roe v. Wade. So federal funds have never gone to that. And the defunding of Planned Parenthood and other abortion providing providers, healthcare providers in Texas, the funding that has been cut is not cutting abortion. It's cutting family planning services. It's cutting cancer screenings to low-income women. So my question to y'all is, what do you think about the sort of very ideological, how do you think religion and politics should go together? On that one.
Yeah.
All right, we still believe in the separation of church and state, just like we believe in the separation of business and state. But the problem is your money goes to things that, like, there are people who are religious and don't believe in that type of sex education and don't believe that their money should be going there. So should you decide subjectively where people's money go just because you believe in it? No, it's all across the board, including in religion. So if you don't want your money going to churches, it shouldn't have to go to churches. Henry David Thoreau. So that same thing goes to Planned Parenthood and things like that. You should be able to put your money where you want it to go. Charities are a great example. There are several charities that don't accept government funding, including WaterAid. There are also like Make-A-Wish Foundation and stuff like that. Okay, I'm done.
I think that the only interaction between government and religion should be the government's ability and duty to protect the freedom of religion, and that's all.
Socialists, do you have a response?
Yes, well, I mean, I imagine you asked the question because clearly the abortion debate is really about the church's attitude towards abortion. We wouldn't be debating this if it weren't for, one, as I mentioned before, the position of women's sexuality in society, but also the very strong influence that churches still have on government policy. And I probably don't need to tell you, I'm totally against the church having any involvement in the government. These are moral questions. They should be left up to individuals. But at the same time, I think, as you mentioned, sex education, if we're going to have school curricula that are actually going to teach kids how to be safe, it means having sex education in schools. It means kids learning how to use condoms. It means kids learning how to use contraception. If you want to lower teenage pregnancies, you don't tell them not to have sex because it's going to happen. You're going to tell them how to do it safely and securely, not to mention the rampant rise of STDs in young people because they don't know how to do these things. And these aren't, and when it comes to that, these aren't questions of religion or where your money's going. It's a question of making a society that's livable.
Republicans have a rebuttal to that?
No.
Americans, do you have anything else to add or respond?
Anything else to add?
Anything?
Yeah. Oh man, I wrote these notes, but I didn't get to rebut, so I'm not sure exactly what the question was for. So I'll just throw something out. Here we go. More money, more votes. How do people get more money? If they get more money through business or through charity or donations or whatever, or through inheritance, then, well, obviously their parents did well, so they got that. But again, more money, where they get the money, most of the money comes, well, who controls the money supply is the Federal Reserve. So I have to argue that one last time, as long as it's who controls the supply. When it comes to minorities in school, everybody's always talking about, often I hear, well, there's so many, percent of black minorities in the university. I never really hear often statistics about the Asian percentage in campus. I'm just throwing that out. That'd be kind of interesting to find out. And how hard it is for them to get in. I was going to hit on kosher foods instead of FDA.
Well, we've gone 30 minutes over. I just want to thank all of you for coming and for everyone for participating.
Yeah!